Do you recognize this woman? From this image, we can dictate. She is married. She is a mother. Her name is Andrea Yates, and she is also responsible for killing her 5 young children, drowning them one by one in a bathtub. From the very beginning, human culture has held a bizarre fascination for tragedy. From the many works of Shakespeare to the modern repackaging of real murders, converted into the next podcast, documentary, and movie. Now, more than ever, we can gather an absurd amount of information on just about anything, down to the smallest, gory detail. Despite this, throughout most of human history, humanity's records, or our proof of living, have either gone undocumented or lost to time. With that being said, in an era before the advent of archiving every second of our lives, we've relied on the word of historians and subsequent genre painters in order to understand and visualize the events of days past. The painting I believe to have best depicted past reality in all its bleak truth would be realist painter Ilya Repin's Ivan the Terrible and his son Ivan. Ivan IV Vasilievich, nicknamed by his people Ivan Grozny, directly translating to Ivan the Fearsome, was the first Tsar of Russia. His Russian nickname fails to denote the westernized terrible, instead being indicative of his ruling power, enabling him to remain one of, if not, Russia's most famous and influential figures. Ivan left his mark on his empire the day he killed his eldest son. His son, confusingly, also named Ivan, and who I'll be referring to from now on as the Tsarevich, his death resulted in the lack of an adequate heir to the throne, thrusting Russia headfirst into a violent and hunger-stricken period of 15 years, known as the Time of Troubles. The first painting to depict the tragedy of the Tsarevich's death would be Ivan the Terrible meditating by the deathbed of his son, painted by Vyacheslav Schwarz in 1861. What is it that you see here? I see a father, restless as his son lays unconscious. There is a subtle anger, with Ivan's fist clenching the cloth. The scene reads that of melancholy, and painted with the brushstrokes of tenderness, care, and charity. Here, Schwarz awards Ivan the mercy of eliminated context, with the audience unaware of what put the Tsarevich on his deathbed. Repin's portrayal is not so kind. Repin strips back any semblance of leniency and immortalizes Ivan's greatest failure with severe brutality. Following Russian historian Nikolai Karamzin's version of events, multiple accounts state the Tsarevich's death was catalyzed by Ivan's encounter with the Tsarevich's pregnant wife. Enraged by the sight of her in her uncustomarily light clothing, Ivan began his assault, resulting in her miscarrying. Infuriated by the actions of his father, the Tsarevich confronted Ivan, whom in his mercury-induced haze, which took the last few decades of his life, struck his son in the head with the royal scepter. The canvas stands at 2.5 meters, absorbing the viewer, with the viewer likely taking the perspective of Boris Godunov, Ivan's advisor and present at the scene of the crime. Despite this, the painting depicts not the conflict, but the aftermath of Ivan's infanticide, with the blood-stained weapon placed at the forefront. A dreadful aura of stillness permeates the scene, with warm, natural lighting spotlighting the 2 men unmoving on the ground, juxtaposed by indicators of an active and violent struggle. The fallen chair, the creased carpets, and most importantly, the primary red on the temple of the younger. Ivan's left hand comforts the wound, the right gently cradling his son. What is striking is the innate tranquility of the Tsarevich in the arms of his killer, resting his head against his chest, his placid face reading that of betrayal, marked not by blood spilt, but a single tear. The Tsarevich's head obscures Ivan's mouth, making the many emotions in the pair of eyes all the more salient. Ivan's stare stands as the focal horror of the piece, his crazed, reddened eyes bulging from their sockets with Repin as if an eyewitness, masterfully portraying Ivan's anguish, fear, regret, and remorse. Through Ivan's eyes alone, we can feel, almost hear Ivan's hysteria, his inner thoughts, or more accurately, his inner turmoil screaming, "Forgive me," ad nauseum. In the 441 years since the incident, historians have failed to meet common consensus on many aspects of the Tsarevich's murder. However, the only hard truths laid in the dates. Tsarevich Ivan Ivanovich was murdered on the 16th of November and died 3 days later on the 19th of November, 1581, making the Tsarevich alive, there to bear witness to Ivan's impending breakdown, making Repin's portrayal all the more haunting. Every time I lock eyes with the harrowing whites of Ivan's, I feel as if his emotions flow into mine, as if all the shock, guilt, and sorrow permeate through the painting, embedding themselves into the psyche of the observer, generating an emotion near impossible to process. The painting's impact on the psyche was seen when it was vandalized in 1913 at the hands of none other than an icon painter, who inflicted 3 lacerations across the faces of the men, all whilst shouting, "Enough of death! Enough of bloodshed!" Ironically, death only followed in suit, with the painting curator Georgy Kruslov committing suicide out of shame, and he had failed to keep the painting safe. And all this leaves me thinking, what about this painting elicits such reactions? Why is it that this painting was subject to vandalism not once, but twice? Ivan the Terrible and his son Ivan's realism and disturbing nature did not exclusively incite fits of rage or a depth of emotional resonance, but also that of repulsion, with the Russian government banning the display of the painting, as it deeply offended the Tsar. Even still today, the painting is not above scrutiny, with Orthodox Christians and extremists believing it to be a misappropriation of history. Starting in the mid-19th century, the art world found renewed interest in the common man and his day-to-day endeavors, declining the artistic values of beauty and dramatization in Romanticism. The new movement, realism, sought to convey contemporary settings depicted life in all its muted colors and depictions of social change. Realism's emergence at the hands of Gustave Courbet challenged the standards for what art was and the topics that it could portray. Anti-institutional at its core, realism sought to represent the hard truths and the real darkness of the times the painters lived through, sites many now still turn their heads from, sites that people would rather see destroyed and forgotten. Realism paved the way for new, modern art. The pure, untouched, artistic candor Courbet helped popularize traveled from the far west of France to Russia, as seen by the painting that demonstrated Russia's history of hardship and Repin's first success, Barge Haulers on the Volga. In 1909, Repin, on commission, would paint an alternative version of his masterpiece entitled Infanticide. It depicts the same event, although in a wildly different light. Impressionist in nature, the desaturated colors are replaced with warm, vibrant values, with a lively red representative of the Tsarevich's blood dominating the open composition. It draws the eye towards the men, with the key difference being in the characterization of Ivan, weeping. Infanticide serves as a much less provocative, much less emotionally terrorizing piece, despite its events likely taking place only mere seconds after the first portrayal. In 1885, Repin did the impossible. The audience no longer sees the fine lines of an oil-soaked canvas. Instead, they see Repin's ruthless judgment and his unwavering empathy for a man who has lost it all. Ivan, like Andrea Yates, would face the harrowing verdict of a lifetime of anguish with the ugly truth of killing their kin. The painting will forever stand alongside Repin's philosophy. Now it is the peasant who is the judge, and so it is necessary to represent his interests. Thank you.